Oatly, this ain't no jokely, has been showing a little strength recently. We're still down 34%, but that's not nearly as bad as it was at one point, I can tell you. So this one started to come back here. I own 18,000 shares in the public account here, right? And so this is an interesting situation because oats have continued to just be in a collapsing price range, right? And I think that's why a stock like this is showing actually some strength finally, is not because of the revenue story really right now, but because of at the end of the day, like what's most important when it comes to a company like Oatly, right? Oats. This oats prices are down 52%. This is going to matter in a significant way for Oatly's margins in 2023, along with some of the changes they made to their facilities and having other folks run their facilities and helping out with that. I mean, my gosh, the margin expansion for Oatly likely this year is going to be astronomically high, right? There's two ingredients that make up the overwhelming amount of what is there in their product. It's water and oats. Water and oats, okay? Everything else is like this much. And so at the end of the day, for somebody like an Oatly, that matters significantly, but it's not just that. You look at something like this matters significantly as well. Refrigerated loaded truck down almost 64% when it comes to pricing year over year. If you look at spot rates for refrigerated, down 26% on a year-over-year basis. Fuel prices are down 17.5%. All this is going to, I can tell you, affect a company like Oatly in a massive way. And so when it comes to Oatly, expect margins to expand rapidly throughout this year. Quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter of massive margin expansion for this company overall. We'll see what happens, but I mean, when I look at oat prices down 52% year over year, and I look at, what's basically happening with trucking rates falling through the floor, I'm telling you, margins should be looking very, very good for a company like that. And when you think about something like that, right, refrigerated in terms of, refrigerated trucking dropping significantly, that's going to help even a company like Ttcf, which Ttcf's in a very different situation than Oatly. Ttcf's fighting for its life. Oatly's not fighting for its life, okay? Ttcf's fighting for its life, and so it needs anything to go right now, okay? And so I can tell you, with trucking rates dropping the way they are, that matters for a company like the Chef, right? And if you look at this even a step further, Chef, they've always imported a lot of their products from Europe into the United States, which means you have to ship overseas. Now, they got doubly screwed, right? Because not only do they have to have all their stuff refrigerated, right, and trucked around the United States of America, which got absolutely obliterated last year, but on top of that, and so if you're wondering why they ended up burning through so much money, right, this is why, okay? And on top of that, freight rates went to the moon, okay? And so when you're somebody like a Chef that's shipping so many of your raw ingredients overseas from Europe to the United States, it's devastating, absolutely devastating for your margins and your profitability and everything like that, okay? Your cash flow situation, it's all a nightmare, a pure nightmare. But obviously, we're in a much, much healthier situation. And the funny thing is, if you look at oats on a 5-year basis, oats are still up like 40-something% on a 5-year basis, I believe, okay? If you look at like freight rates, I mean, it's not like we're at some record low. I mean, we could still easily go lower when it comes to something like this. Never mind if you're thinking of kind of a recessionary scenario. So these are things to kind of factor in. I think that's why some of those stocks are showing some signs of life, right? Despite being in a tough place. Our Corsair Gaming fits that criteria as well, right? Corsair Gaming's up almost 29% year to date. Is the gaming market that strong right now? Is the streaming market that strong right now? I don't think so. But ultimately, for somebody like a Corsair, all their products are made over in Asia, and then they have to ship them over either to Europe or to the United States. And when you're talking about paying $10,000 plus for a container just to ship your product overseas, your margins are wrecked. Your profitability is wrecked. Your cash flows are wrecked, right? And we saw that just devastate Corsair. And so Corsair, regardless, the gaming doesn't have to even be strong this year. Gaming can still be in a weakened place. Streaming hardware can still be in a weakened place, and you'll see Corsair's margins, profitability, and cash flows improve quite substantially in the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter this year, regardless of kind of what happens in the gaming market. And that's a good spot to be in, because many times you're kind of counting on revenue growth in order to get kind of margin growth. And for a lot of these companies, it doesn't have to be that way. Oatly, Chef, Corsair, they can see margin improvements without seeing any major uptick in demand. And so that's kind of, I think, one of the reasons why some of those stocks are starting to show some strength there, okay? I did something that I thought was important, because I thought about, like, what's, the most important things that go into Hershey's? Oh, gosh, sugar, right? I just pulled up sugar chart, okay? And I don't know if you guys, how well you can see this. That's the price of sugar. That's the price of sugar over this past year, okay? Literally, it's taken off like a rocket ship, basically right before we kind of got into 23, and it's just gone to the moon. So when I look at something like that, right, and I think about somebody like a Hershey's, what I think of immediately is their margins are probably going to be hit over this next year. And this great increase in profitability, margins, and everything you've seen over the last few years, honestly could take a major hit over this next year. And don't be surprised if they're spending on quite a bit of marketing right now as well. And all of a sudden you get hit with, those sugar prices the way they are. And next thing you know, you're all of a sudden into a situation where margins start to actually, let's call it, go down potentially over the next 12 to 18 months. And if that happens, next thing you know, you're looking at a Hershey's that's back in the $100-something range instead of the $260-ish or wherever it's at, okay? So always think about these things. Some of these businesses are very, I went through this last year. What stock did I own that got insanely hit by the commodity super cycle? There's a lot of them did, okay? I'll be honest, pretty much every one of them did. But there's one stock specifically I'm thinking of. If you watch my content a lot, you know that stock. It was Oatly, right? Because the price of oats in at the end of 2021 and going into 2022 went to the moon. And for Oatly, like the two most important ingredients for their product, water and oats. So if you're talking about the most important pretty much raw ingredient other than water to go in their product is gone to the moon, oh my gosh, it's awful for your margins, it's awful for your profitability, your cash flow, everything like that, right? And so Oatly, we're already starting to see their margins improve, but you'll see their margins likely improve dramatically as this year kind of ticks on here for Oatly. And you look at somebody like a Hershey's, I wouldn't be surprised at all if you actually see their margins go down as this year ticks along. So that's just my opinion and belief on that whole situation, okay? I understand if you were a short seller or you own put options, I understand you really needing this market to go lower here, right? So much bad news still going on. You really need this market to go lower as soon as possible, right? If you're long, I can understand if you own short-term call options, you really need this market to break higher, right? Because you're like, crap, my options are going to expire worthless unless we get this market moving. For those two groups, I understand why it's a troubling range and, it's frustrating and all those sorts of things. For longs, I don't understand why this would be a troubling range. If you're really bullish on the market for the next, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, right? Because at the end of the day, if you can get a elongated period, right, where the market really hasn't gone anywhere for 2 years, where you can buy into companies at great prices and you can build out those positions over several years, it's the best thing that could happen to you as an investor. The worst thing that can happen to you as an investor, and ask anybody that got in the market at the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, ask those people what's the worst thing. They're going to tell you, okay? And ask people that got in the market in 1999. Ask people that got in the market in 2007. The worst case scenario is when you're in a blow-off top situation, everybody's only looking at the positives. There's none of the negatives are out there because those are the markets that can obviously take you down and take you down in a massive, massive way. So I look at a market like this as a long, and I welcome it. I don't need my portfolio to say a certain number tomorrow. I do care that it says a certain number 3 years from now. I do care that it says a certain number 7 years from now and 10 years from now, okay? And so that's kind of my thought process about that. If you told me, Amazon's a main focus of a stock I'm buying this year, right? And there's a lot of stocks I'm buying this year, but that's my main focus. If you told me, would I rather have Amazon go to 150, next month, or go to 95 next month, 95 without question. I'm a buyer of the stock. And I can buy a whole lot more shares at 95 than I can 150. I can tell you that much, right? I'm not going to be a seller. Even if the stock went to 150, I'm not going to be a seller because I'm holding Amazon until it's, many hundreds of dollars because I believe it's going to be a multi-trillion-dollar market cap based upon where I think its net income's going and what I think the P ratio the company could command, right? Think about these things for a moment. It's not a troubling range. It just depends on what your perspective is in the market. Are you a trader? Are you short? You really need something to happen here. Or are you, a call option player? You really need something to happen here. Yeah, my main concern this week is actually Amazon skyrocketing on earnings. That's actually my main concern. I'm very concerned with that stock hitting the 120s this week. Very concerned with that. I'm hoping it doesn't happen, obviously, because I want to continue to buy that stock for as cheap as possible. So I'm hoping it goes down on these earnings and goes under 100. That would be an ideal situation. But I am worried, very worried, that stock's going to hit 120 something this week and blast higher on earnings. if Andy Jassy has some good things to say on that conference call, that, they're kind of seeing a bottom in AWS, oh my gosh, I mean, that would be huge for the stock, right? If obviously they get more into the nitty gritty with the numbers and how many billions of dollars their cost savings are going through right now are going to be, if they're talking about margin uptick, profitability uptick in the e-commerce business, if advertising is still remaining decently strong, I mean, those are sorts of things that will send the stocks back over 120. It's been a lagger. You saw it, how much it's underperformed Meta, right? It's night and day difference, right? It's kind of been performing similar to Apple, Microsoft, and those other stocks. And that's not normal for Amazon. It usually way outticks those on the upside and way outticks those on the downside as well. So I have big concerns about that one popping and being in the 120s this week. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it goes under 100, but I'm concerned. Let's just put it that way.